Welcome back to the Business Roundtable podcast, where we sit down with leaders who've built something real and put lessons out that actually transfer into business. I am David Carr, founder of Steward Your Business, your host. And I'm going to start here with you, perhaps a sentence that might make you feel a little uncomfortable as a leader. Their yes was a polite version of goodbye. That is how my guest describes a moment where most leaders miss, where someone agrees or nods and says, oh, that sounds great, but you actually never hear from them again. And not because they lied, but because they were never actually speaking. You weren't speaking their language. You guys were disconnected. And so I'm very excited to have Jake Stahl on our podcast here, brand new guest. He spent over 15 years inside this gap. He's trained over 10,000 sales professionals across dozens of states, 6 countries, influenced over $100 million in cumulative deal flow. And what I'm excited that he's built a framework called NeuroStrategy we're going to break down a bit today that goes past personality tests, but really into the psychology, the wiring the person has across the table. And he's even wrote a book, literally, called Own the Room, How to Communicate, Be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll put that on the show notes. Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, David, thanks for having me. This is quite an honor.
Oh, it's a blast. I really enjoy getting to know you. We've had a number of conversations, and your concept of neurostrategy was unique to me. I think it was a new, different take on it. And so before you got to neurostrategy, you know, you're in the pharmaceutical industry. You've been leading teams for, I think over $65 million in annual sales. You ranked number 1 in the country. But what did all that teach you? That well-intentioned, you were working it, but like you said, but it didn't land. Like, hey, what did you spent all those years and it didn't land? So you obviously, it spurred you to go to neurostrategy. So take us before neurostrategy. What were you seeing there?
Yeah, so I've been a sales trainer for close to 30 years now. And I'll tell you what, David, the one thing I see is buyers, well, not just buyers, all of us have what I call 2 profiles. We have the one profile that we show everybody. I put the hat on that profile, the glasses on there. Yes. I'm polite. This is the profile I put forward. But the truth is, David, we all have a second profile. And that second profile is the one that makes all the decisions. So it's the second profile that remembers past experiences that were just like this one. It's the one that responds to fear and pricing and gets all the anxiety. And you know how that person is. Hey, I want to buy a new car. And that's the outward facing. I want to drive a new vehicle. But the inside person, the second profile is going, dude, you can't afford this. You can barely afford your mortgage. So what the hell are you doing? So my whole career has been around how do we identify the true decision maker, which is your second profile, and how do we talk to it? And that goes way beyond typical sales training because we're always taught, talk to the person in front of you. And if your pitch is good enough, you'll sell. And I found, David, over 30 years, that's just not true.
Yeah.
It's just...
That is fascinating. And and I hope as every people are listening to this, because I'm just checking myself on that, Jake, and, recognizing there's these, I'll call them even saboteurs or ways of thinking like, hey, it's to your point, I really want that car, but then there's all these other things that are going on in the back of my head. And I didn't even realize what you said. I remember you're saying that. I remember my wife saying, oh, great to have a second house or go to those places. And to your point, I would be like, oh, we can't like said afford that, or I'd have all these things in my mind. And then I was like, I'm shutting these things down. They're not helping me. They're actually hurting me,
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And so, what made you, so you saw this challenge, because what made you though, so you were in sales, you were helping folks make this adjustment, but what made you step away and really move toward what you're doing, obviously today, because you could have kept going and doing this, but you pivoted here a little bit, not a little bit, quite a bit. And you said, okay, hey, there's a bigger problem here. Walk me through your journey of because you were experiencing it, you're saying, okay, but you could have just stayed in that sales space. You could have just kept doing that, Jake. What made you want to pivot as a business owner, and go in this other direction?
There were 2 things. The first is, just like you and everybody else listening, we're all buyers. We're all buying things all the time or declining things all the time. And I think about the way I want to be treated. So when I think about that, I think I want this person to really understand what my motivations are. I want them to really understand why I'm buying or not buying. And oddly enough, David, this all came from the question, how are you? Hate that greeting. And the reason is it creates a preconditioned response, right? I say, hi, how are you? And you go, fine, thanks. How are you?
Yes.
If I talk to a member of my family and I say, I love you, they say, oh, yeah, I love you too. If you go into a retail store and the clerk says, can I help you? Our response is, no, thanks, just looking.
Yeah.
Right. So I found that preconditioned responses were leading to preconditioned conversations. So my whole goal was A, how do I appeal to profile number 2? Because I've got one and I wish somebody could read that.
Yep.
And number 2 is if you start me with a preconditioned response, I'm going to continue to develop those preconditioned responses because all my past is going to come flooding forward. I call them echoes. So my whole goal was, how do we start genuine conversation and avoid those preconditioned responses? And how do I talk to the decision maker? And what I found was when I started teaching this, it created almost like a referral machine because people were saying, Jake, we've never thought about it this way before. Do that for us too. So it really became a great referral process because I wasn't your typical sales trainer. I was now a sales psychologist, whatever you want to call it. And so I pursued that a little bit more. I got a degree in psychology. I have a master's certification in neuro-linguistic programming. And we all know Tony Robbins made that famous. And I always joke that I've read so many social psychology books, somebody just owes me a degree. Just hand it over. I've done the work. So I took all 3 of those, behavioral psych, social psych, and NLP, and I created what I call NeuroStrategy. And it's teaching someone how to talk to that second profile.
That's so fascinating. And I think to your point, Jake, we need more of that in the world. That's why I'm having you on the podcast, because I can't tell you how many either emails, direct messages I get that are to your point of the better for this generalized.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Right? They're this general. Could you use more clients today? I mean, come on now. I mean, really, please.
Right.
I mean, they're and to your point, it's just selling to who's in front of you. I've got something to sell. Let me just sell in front of you instead of like building the relationship and understanding where this person is coming from. And why I love having you on here is because you understand. I mean, there are truths about our human condition and there's different personalities. And I think personalities are good. I use the 5 voices. I know there's DISC, and I think these are all great things, but we have to go deeper in that. And I think that's where I really want to unpack a little bit more about the NeuroStrategy, because I think people, can really benefit from, like you said, get to that. I like that, how you said that second voice. There's that front end and I think sometimes people are presenting that, and some people, honestly, what I was just talking about some folks about this last week, Jake, where they're presenting a certain first voice, like you said, and they don't even realize. I think even themselves, they don't realize there's a second voice.
You're correct.
And why they're right? Is that be true? They don't even realize, they haven't even identified that second voice in themselves.
Right. And one of the ways that you can become most aware of this is when you did something or you said something to somebody and you go, oh my God, that was my dad talking. Right? That's the inner voice. And I tell people, you have a caption over your head. You're talking one thing, but your caption's telling me something completely different. And it's our inability to recognize that makes people like me a little bit more valuable, because you may be saying, hey, I don't want to do this, but I can see you do. You just need a really good reason to do it. Or it could be the opposite. You could be saying, hey, Jake, I really want to buy this, but I see a little light over your head that's saying, got no interest. And as soon as we're off the phone, I'm ghosting you.
So if this individual doesn't understand that they have a second voice, it's certainly going to be harder to reach somebody else's second voice, right? It's like understanding, like, where's this coming from?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So,
Break it
yes,
down.
it can be difficult to pull out somebody's voice if you're not listening for it. But my book, Own the Room,
Mm-hmm.
details how to do that through the framework I created. So, how do
Mm-hmm.
you get to that inner profile?
Yeah.
And it gives a 6-step process for getting there, and it's really intuitive and easy to do. But it's mostly, David, about seeing things you never saw before. Like one of the first steps I have for my clients is do me a favor this week, just notice whenever somebody looks away from the camera. It's all I want you to do. Don't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the week, they're like, Jake, this happens all the time. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
always doing it. But now I've got you looking at a tell, and now you practice it, and you're never going to unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
Because keep in mind, David, 80% of our communication is nonverbal. And let's put that into context. Let's say, David, your best friend calls you today.
Yep.
And he says, David, if you just follow these 5 steps, you'll be a millionaire by dinner. So you're like, oh my God, let me get a pen. I'm ready to go. Then the phone goes static for 8 minutes. Can't hear what they're saying. You know they're talking, but you can't hear it. Then all of a sudden he comes back on. He goes, David, good talking to you. Get this done. You'll be rich by dinner, and hangs up.
Oh my gosh.
So you're missing 80% of the message.
Yeah. Yes.
But we do this every day as humans. We don't pay attention to what the body language is. So we're missing most of the message that's taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And the book Own the Room actually walks you through how to notice those things as well. So part of noticing that person's second profile is noticing what their body's telling you. And it doesn't require a degree in body language. I break it down super simple.
Mm-hmm.
Just several things you can notice make all the difference in the world.
What's interesting, Jake, you said that. I was talking to somebody, and I'm wondering, I want to get your thought on this, because I've noticed there are times I'm on doing video calls or meetings, and people don't have their video on. It's like they don't want to be seen. They don't. It's like they want to hide. And I was, talk about. I was talking to another client that I had, and he was telling me I'm working with this guy, and we do deep work, like this work of 5 voices, understanding ourselves. And he's like, the guy literally said, Jake, oh, I don't do any of those assessments. I don't want people to know me. I mean, I was like, wow. So what is that? Speak a little bit to the fact of that self-preservation, or like what the wall that people are putting up there.
Yeah. And the basic concept behind that, David, is a lot of what I teach is that every decision has a cost. So, for instance, with this gentleman, it was his decision to not be on camera was probably spurred by something that happened previously that gave away too much information, and he felt exposed. So the cost of turning off his camera is minimal. It's free. It's a gimme. But the cost of turning on the camera is huge. It's bad memories. It's a bad prior experience. And I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just throwing out a possibility.
Yeah. Yep.
But everything has that cost. And I argue in one of my most recent podcasts that the cost of responding to somebody on an email or on a call is exactly why people get ghosted. And that's why the yes is often just a polite no.
Wow. So I want to go deeper with NeuroStrategy.
Sure.
What is NeuroStrategy? How does this get, like, you mentioned when we talked earlier about maybe a DISC or Myers Briggs is kind of a high level, overview. But what does the NeuroStrategy kind of get at that those, they're not bad, but what does it get at that those miss, Jake? Those kind of personality assessments.
First of all, I don't knock personality assessments. Yeah. I think they're amazing and accurate and should absolutely be used as part of your prospecting. I think it's fantastic. Love your 5 voices thing. That should absolutely be used. What those don't tell you is the undercurrents or the captions over their head. So I may know that they're highly relationship driven and they're excitable and they respond best to people who talk in stories. That's great. But it doesn't tell you what story they'd prefer to hear. It doesn't tell you why that person prefers the story. And that's part of sales, right? Is if I'm going to change your mind, I need to know why you make decisions and how you make them. The overall personality tests tell you the personality, but they don't tell you what spurs that personality underneath. NeuroStrategy is what helps uncover that piece.
Yeah. So when you're getting the NeuroStrategy, and particularly when you're talking about sales, Jake, it's like, what is driving their decisions? And I've heard, I mean, I had another woman on my podcast, Teresa Holland, recently, and we were talking about how she helps business owners talk about getting better at clarifying the pain or the problem. But to your point, right? What is that for that second voice? Because sometimes we talk too high and it doesn't resonate. It's like, it doesn't hit me the right way.
Yeah.
And so there's this mismatch of what we're communicating. Talk a little bit about what do you see where leaders or sales, or there's this mismatch. We talked a little earlier, but really where they're like getting this wrong, where they're like communicating and it's not being received. What are the other situations you may have seen, or where have you worked with clients even, Jake, where it's like they were doing that? And like, let's use the example of this gentleman even maybe where he was turning off his camera, but we could turn that around where he's like turning on his camera. He's like, oh, I'm leaning in. Oh, I actually want to be known. Yeah. Can you walk us through kind of the mismatch and maybe where we've actually had successful breaking through that?
Sure. So let me give you a real life scenario. I was on with a prospect about 6 months ago. Wonderful woman, super nice. And we got on the phone and we both had our cameras on. And I noticed her glasses matched her earrings. It's almost like they came from the same factory. So I said to her, wow, that combo is fantastic. How did you do that? Did you order that together? Immediately, her hand went to her wedding ring. She started to twirl it, started to pull it off, put it back on. There's my caption. Compliments are not good. And there's a million reasons she could have been twirling her wedding ring. She could have been reminding herself she's married. She could have been telling me, hey, I'm married. Don't compliment the way I look. Could have been a million things. But most people would overlook that. Nervous twitch. They just do that when they're uncomfortable. But I took that and redirected to another topic completely so we could get back to business. As soon as I redirected and got back to business, wedding ring fidgeting stopped. Her hands were on the table. She was interested and locked in. But as leaders, we don't tend to do that. We tend to go in and think, if I can motivate them, if I can get them excited, if I can really get just some gung-ho attitude, it's going to work. Motivation is different than intention. So the group could leave motivated, but their intention could remain the same or even drop down a notch. And part of it is just getting a feel for the group. Don't talk at them, talk with them. And if you have the choice, don't talk at all for the first 10 or 15 minutes and let them air what they're thinking so you can build on it. Like one of my rules of thumb when I'm with a prospect is I make sure they talk for the first 10 or 15 minutes. If they try to direct it to me, I redirect it back to them because I want them to know I'm listening. I'm paying attention. It's giving me an idea of what their caption is and what their second profile looks like. But more importantly, David, it makes them feel good. They've actually proven chemically that when you talk about yourself and what you do, it's chemically equivalent to eating a chocolate cupcake.
Yeah.
You get the same neurotransmitters, you get the same endorphin rush. So if I can get them feeling good about the conversation and they trust me, they're going to reveal more. But most leaders and salespeople are like, let me get out what I have to say. And as you're talking, I'm just going to be thinking about what I'm going to say next.
Right.
But it's an ebb and flow.
That's so powerful. What the word that comes to mind as you say that, Jake, is be curious.
Yeah, for sure.
Curious. And really listen for what is, like you said, meaningful to them. And you brought up some of these things that we can look at body language as well. And I think, like to your point, leaders, particularly maybe some personality types, are a little bit more driven that they can kind of railroad folks and undermine their influence instead if they would just, like you said, slow it down a little bit and listen. And it's hard sometimes. Certain folks are a little bit more driven in that way. Others are better naturally listeners. But I think understanding that when to pump the brakes and when to push the gas on there. Once people start applying this, I mean, how long do you usually see, Jake, to where it actually starts, like they're like, oh my goodness, they start to, like you said, start noticing things. Is it pretty quick where they start to see, oh man, I didn't even notice that blind spot, or wasn't even aware of that?
It depends on the person. If they're excited about learning it and really dig into the homework, they're gonna see a noticeable change within a month to 6 weeks. Absolutely huge change. For people who aren't as dedicated to making it work, I've had clients that have gone 6 to 8 months just because they continue to push back and continue to fight the issue. But let me just throw out another example for you. I had a prospect I was introduced to, and I got on the phone with her and I let her talk. And out of 30 minutes, she talked for about 29 and a half of it. So I got off the phone and my wife goes, how'd it go? And I said, I didn't even get to pitch my wares. I said, so I don't anticipate a call back, which is okay. But I think she just needed somebody to listen. So I had written her off. 45 minutes later, my email pinged. And it said from the customer, it said, don't think it was lost on me that all you did was listen. When can we get started? Oh. So it's not always going to happen that way, but the power of silence and just listening often has a much larger impact than we think it will.
Yeah. And to your point, that is awesome that you created that space for number one, but for the folks, and I want folks to hopefully I know the people that are listening to this probably are the ones that are actually going to be coachable and want to listen to this, but want to go and actually do this work, Jake. Yeah. But maybe they have somebody on their team, or maybe something else that is being resistant to this. And I always find this is, what would you say to those folks that they're like, they really want to help their team succeed, they're trying to lead by example, but there's resistance there, and what would you encourage them? Maybe there's some language or some things there, I think, to help them unlock themselves, because I feel like what you said earlier, Jake, about this resistance, it's in my words, it's a self-preservation one, and it's like I'm going to lose this. You said earlier, I'm going to lose this if I put my camera on. There's a bigger loss. Right. How have you been able to turn it around saying, no, yes, it could be. However, we could flip it around. It could actually be an amazing gain, actually way more than you're losing.
Yeah.
That's my mindset anyways, of where I'm coming from. And I'm trying to help unlock people where they are going to see the gain of the opportunity versus the loss. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of times when I get leaders that are a little resistant to try this or to learn it, I alert them to one thing, and we talk about it a lot, is that when people make a decision, it's rarely based on what you talked about. What it is based on is their chance for reward and the cost to them internally. So let me give you an example. We all know that we go through stress and anxiety. There's one camp that says, hey, listen, just take a benzodiazepine, take an Ativan, take a Xanax, take something to calm you down. Then there's another group that says meditation is the answer. So there's a cost to each of those, right? There's a cost to taking a drug, side effects, price, and there's a cost to meditation. If you're not great at sitting down and shutting up, that's not going to be great for you. But it's not about the fact of I want to get less anxious. That's a given. But many
popping up there. Keep going.
But many salespeople say, "Oh my God, they're resisting me." Yes, they're not. And as a leader, we say they pushed back on me all meeting. They didn't. What they pushed back on was what was the cost to them, and if they've ever experienced this before, they're bringing up memories of how that went. So if you say as a leader, hey, listen, I have an open door policy, and you walk away feeling great, you could have somebody in the audience going, yeah, the last guy that said that, he can. they came in and complained. So
Yep.
it's not you. It's the flashbacks or the echoes of past decisions. And it's your
Yes.
job to figure out what those echoes are because they're making the decision. And that's the second profile.
That is so powerful. It's funny you said that, Jake. We did an episode a while back, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that point. An open door policy. It's not a bad thing, but it may or may not get you the desired results. To your very point, we talked about that on that podcast episode. They're limiting themselves. They're like, I ain't going in there because of previous experience. So then the leader's like, why isn't this working? Well, like you said, that's that other voice. One of the things as we're talking about these challenges overcoming, because you've overcome a lot, Jake, you've gone through a lot, and we have business owners, aspiring business owners, leaders that are wanting to step out.
Yeah.
And I always, I don't always do this, but I think it's important because I think you have such a unique perspective, Jake, that you ups and downs, and as we all do, right?
Yeah.
But I think you've created something very meaningful, beneficial here in the world, this NeuroStrategy in a ways. And by the way, you guys, you can connect with Jake. We're connected on LinkedIn, and I'll put it all in the show notes. And if you have comments, put them in the show notes. But speak a little bit about how this is really seen. I think we get the big picture of like on LinkedIn, the hey, we won, how we did it well. But talk a little bit about, Jake, what was the cost for you and your own journey, right? Because I think this is important for our listeners, because sometimes they think, oh, it should be so easy, or we should just figure it out. And it's like, well, no, it's not. And anything worthwhile, and I think this is worthwhile. You guys, that's why I have Jake on the podcast, and he's distilled this down for you. But talk a little bit about your own journey and how it keeps you keep going, because you have this compelling vision. I call it compelling vision to go and continue to help people day after day and get out there, Jake. But share a little bit with our audience about your own journey as a founder in creating this.
So I went to work at 11 years old. I worked at my dad's pharmacy and started to learn business from the ground up. And I went through several sales spots. And at one point, David, I was speaking regularly all over the country. I was requested in several countries to do training sessions. It was great. But then I hit my third knee surgery. And at my third knee surgery, I got hooked on opioids and went into a 2-year spiral. Lost my marriage, house, savings, lost it all, everything. And when I came out of it and when I went through rehab, I saw something that really startled me. And that's that at that time, when I went through that, opioid addiction was looked at as, you're bad. You should live under a bridge. Don't talk to our kids. Now it's much more accepted. But anyway, what I noticed was that on the cover of People magazine, if a star revealed they were an addict, it was, oh my God, poor them. I wonder how I can help. But when they saw me as an addict, they're like, stay away from our family. You're not coming to work for me. Get away. And I thought, what is the dichotomy and why does it work like that? And it hit me. It's not about the person. It's about their presence. And these were all stars. So they already had a presence. They already had a place in that person's heart or mind. I didn't have that. So my Own the Room was created. And I tell this brief story in the front of the book. Own the Room was created to get back into rooms I was no longer allowed into. And a lot of that was just changing my presence, changing how I came across. Because what I found was if I tried to explain my addiction, people just doubled down on why they didn't want to talk to me. So there had to be another way.
Yeah, there has to be another way, right?
And, it was a lot of trial and error. But what I found was if I changed the way I show up and I listened to what their body is saying as much as their mouth, it changed everything. And now I'm remarried. I live in a beautiful home. My business is remarkably successful. I wrote a book. I've got a podcast. I mean, it was a long road back. Don't think it was easy. It was a long road back, but with what problem you're going through as a business owner, somebody's going through another problem that was equal to or less than or more than yours. And it's just, how much do you want it? How much do you want to come back? And how much do you want to get done yet in your life? And I just had a lot to do. I just no longer had anybody to do it with.
Oh, man, Jake. Well, you're doing it now. And I think
Yeah.
to your point, there's different challenges. And like you said, why I created the podcast was I wanted business owners and leaders to know they're not alone. They have somebody else that has gone through this. Where there's always somebody, like I say, to the right of us and to the left of us. And then if there's somebody here, you're struggling in this area, here's somebody, Jake, that can walk you through and really be better. I like how you just said it, Jake, be really present and in a way, and carry yourself in a way to where people like pause and they're like, oh, wait a minute, who's this guy? And how is he? Wow, he's approaching things differently than I normally see.
Yeah.
And I think it's more than, just sales, but it's really, like you said, being seen, heard, and respected, period.
Yep.
It's like, okay, this is, how do we do that better in our world? Because where I've seen this, Jake, and I want your input on it, is like, where leaders are missing that mark. They think, in my world, a lot of folks are engineers, scientists, they're very technically savvy. Awesome, fantastic, that's great. That gets you in the room, that gets kind of like check that box. But they fall apart, to your point, in the presence, meaning having that presence, and they are missing it. They're not reading the room well, if you will, and they're just assuming because I have this, I've been able to check this box, or I've got this degree, or whatever. It's like, that's enough. And I don't, unfortunately, it's not enough, in my opinion. You speak to a little bit about that, where leaders are missing that mark of being that present person.
I think one of the things, David, I've seen over coaching over the years, and I just did a podcast on this, is that there's when people buy what you have as a leader, as a salesperson, they're not buying what you have. They're buying who they are with what you have. So if a new leader comes in, they're not buying your motivation or your 30 years of experience. What they're buying is their future with you at the helm. And those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when we're trying to coach somebody or we're trying to send them an email, we have to realize that we're not talking to that person. We're appealing to a side of them we can't hear or see. Let me give you a great example. Many people get ghosted after their call with somebody. The person goes, yes, yes. Oh my God, this is a great idea. Follow up on me. Send me an email. That's it. Right? It's done.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not emailing the same person you just talked to.
Mm.
That person was enthusiastic. That person was excited. That person was ready to go. The person you're emailing is now cold. They're not that excited person anymore. They're now a person that has time away from you. And the cost to respond to you is much different than it was when you were live.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So saying yes when you're live is considered polite. It's just a way to say no and get you off the call. But when you say yes in an email, now it's a firm commitment.
Mm.
And that has a higher cost than just ghosting you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have to consider at all times who we're talking to, and it can be different hour to hour, day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, where as leaders, we kind of sometimes miss the boat.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So if we're talking to a group where we just had a great sales year, that's one group of people. If you had a difficult sales year, you're not talking to that same group of people again. You're now talking to a completely different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And if as leaders, we can tune into that, read that caption over their head,
yes,
our effectiveness increases exponentially.
Yes. And this is where I want to have you on the podcast, Jake, because you have tools and resources, and we'll send folks your way. If you want to do deeper work on this, and Jake's shown this to me and some of the things, it's great. It's a fantastic tools and resources of what you can do. Because Jake, like you said, that can be overwhelming. It's like, okay, how do I do this? How
it's
do
a
I
lot to think
do this,
about.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because that is complex, and we have a lot of different types of people, and people think about different things. It's not one and the same, even if you're, and so as you're saying that, Jake, I'm thinking to myself, as a leader, it's like, you're right, in the presence of that. And then how do I follow up with them in a very thoughtful way?
Yep.
And I was even backing up even further, Jake, to your point of like, when I'm reaching out to people and here's the thing I found too, Jake, of like, people are also very polite in that they will maybe take an initial call with you or something like that, which that's great. But am I being thoughtful as to how to make the most of that time with them? Again, similar to that caption, right? Before they come into the call, have asked them, been curious enough, have I said enough questions in a I'll say qualifying from a sales perspective, but in a good way of like, I want to be a service. I want to make sure when they come into this conversation, they come into the room, like you're saying, that hopefully it's not just a yes, it's not polite, because we've already kind of, in a good way of understanding where they're coming from, right? We've set the stage to where they're like, let's just lay that down so we can get to the root of it and make the most of our time together, right? Because our time is finite. So what can we do so we're not spending this time of this dance, if you will, right? Only to be like, both parties are like, well, what was that for? What did we get out of that?
Yep. And David, I marvel at salespeople and leaders who don't prep for a conversation. Mm-hmm. Like as a leader, you'll say, David, will you come to my office? We should have a talk. Yes. And I just wing it as a leader. Mm-hmm. You're missing the boat with that. You should prep. Where's David's mind today? What's the goal of this conversation? What's the way to get there at the lowest cost for David? And the same thing with the discovery call. I can't tell you how many salespeople I say, how'd you prep for this discovery call? It was just one of my meetings today. I just went in, and then you know what? Your close rate is going to stay at a measly 10 to 20% because that's how you're preparing for your customers.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, I know we're getting into the podcast here, and I would love to go deeper, but we're getting there. You've brought up so many great points today, and I think hopefully people's minds are starting to turn a little bit more of like, oh man, I haven't thought about it this way. I haven't approached it this way. Of course, we're going to make sure your book, Own the Room, is in our show, our comments links and the websites. But if I'm a business owner or a leader and I want to have more meaningful conversations and connections with people, or maybe I missed something in our conversation today, and that you're like, hey, David, this, if nothing else, if the listener's leaning in here today, what would you encourage them to start doing today that they could take away, apply in their life, Jake, what we've talked about?
So you're looking for a kind of a one-liner as to do as your major takeaway.
Yeah, what would you, start, right? Is there something that they could do? Like, I liked how you said earlier, like that one thing you just said of like looking, if you're talking to somebody and they're looking away at the camera, that's just an indicator like, hey, they're disengaging. But for that business owner, that person is really just, again, not having that, like you said, they're not having the effect that they want, Jake. What would you encourage to do for themselves, like to look or reflect or assess in themselves?
My big encouragement is to read up on things like social psychology, which really documents how 90% of the population thinks. Some great authors are Cialdini or Jonah Berger. You can read their books that are amazing and they're wonderful. You can also listen to podcasts. My podcast talks all about this all the time on Own the Room with Jake Stahl. So listen and read on how to get better, because I can tell you, communication, nobody masters it. The best we can hope for is that we were a little better than we were yesterday. So it's a process, but instead of looking up that cat video or watching the hockey recap from last night, take some time, listen to podcasts of people that offer what you need and listen to them. Because that's going to be your biggest bang for your buck, is just continuing to learn.
Yeah. And we're going to put the podcast, Jake, your podcast. I'm going to come on your podcast as well, which will be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will.
I think you're right. Be a lifelong learner. Be willing to spend a little time. And it's hard. We got a lot of distractions. We got a lot of things in our world. But I think your point, Jake, spending that time investing in yourself is only going to pay dividends. And I'm seeing that firsthand. And I'm so grateful that you came on the podcast today and really shared your insights with our listeners.
Thanks for having me. And you know what? One other thing is we often think we're a product of our successes. I would like people to think about you're really a product of your mistakes. Your mistakes are what has gotten you here. And what you learn from the mistakes is what's created your successes. So when you make a mistake or you're wrong, don't ever look at it as, God, I'm not good enough, or, oh, I should never be a leader. The fact that you think like that is exactly why you're good enough and should be a leader. So take your mistakes, use them as a learning curve, and forgive yourself at night, because you know what? You're never going to have that perfect day. So at night, just take a few minutes and say, you know what? You done good today. Tomorrow we'll try to do better. And just forgive yourself before you go to bed. It's very cleansing.
Beautiful, beautiful, Jake. And I can't agree more. I like to agree more on this journey, Jake, coming. Those are just part of our journey, right? And that's not where we're ending the story. We're continuing on. And if you want to continue on with Jake and go check out Orchestraight, we'll put that in the show notes. We'd love to have you guys connect with Jake and follow up there. We want you to be owning the room, being that person that is present, respected, and understood, and you're understanding them. Of course, we love you guys when you like and subscribe and follow along. That always is meaningful here at the Business Roundtable podcast. Reach out to me at Steward Your Business if you have a question, you want to go deeper in your leadership team and development with what we're doing with Jake. And we'd love to have you guys follow along there as well. Thank you, Jake, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody, come back and be well. Thanks so much.